Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Nui. And Govind, thank you very much for walking us through that conversation. What a wonderful way to start off the leveling towards an ungendered world. I just wanted to remind us a couple of things that Ms. Nui said that really struck me and will become part of our conversation in this coming session, but also I think over the next few days as well. One, of course, is the fact, as she ended, that that the women represent one of the most potent talent pools, probably an untapped talent pool, and becomes a key pillar for the competitive advantage that we have as a country, as a society, and the responsibility that she placed on all of our shoulders, responsibility on family to help that talent pool, help women step up, and also the responsibility on us as leaders, as a country, in our societies, in our institutions, to ensure that they have that space to step into themselves. And a reminder that there is no perfect model. And that really struck me, because that is one of the conversations we're going to get into next. We're going to talk about what it's like in the manufacturing sector. I myself, I'm in the infrastructure sector. My name is James Abraham. I run a solar power company called SolarArise. And infrastructure is known for being incredibly skewed, completely male dominated. It's true for most manufacturing sectors as well. The question is, how do we move towards more parity in this sector? And going beyond just statements to real action, beyond intent to seeing real results. And to help me in that journey, in that conversation, we've got three absolutely wonderful people who are going to join us. First is Rama Kirloskar, who currently serves as the Joint Managing Director of Kirloskar Brothers Limited and the Managing Director of Kirloskar Ebara Pumps Limited. Welcome, Rama. Thank you for joining us. We have Sunil Khurana, who's the Chief Operating Officer for JCB India Limited. He has been with the company for 24 years and contributed significantly to JCB India becoming a global manufacturing hub for the group. Welcome, Sunil. Thanks for joining us. And we have Anuradha Razdan. Anuradha is a member of the Management Committee of HUL as Executive Director HR and Vice President HR, Unilever South Asia. She's also a member of Unilever's Global HR Leadership Team. Anuradha, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon.
So what I thought I'd do is open up and have each of you share the journeys of your own company as you work towards gender parity, 5-7 minutes each, and then we'll open it up to a conversation. I want to remind everyone who's listening, we'll have a chance to just interact as well and ask your questions. There's a Q&A box on your screen. So if you do have questions, please just pop something in there. Sunil, Rama, Anuradha, you don't need to worry about that. I'll read those questions and moderate those into our conversation as we go. So Rama, can we start with you?
Sure, James.
Great.
So good afternoon, everyone. It's really wonderful to be on this forum. So let me start by talking a bit about our company. Kirloskar Brothers Limited, or KBL as we call it, is a 130-year-old company established in 1888. It is the parent company of the Kirloskar Group. I'm a fifth-generation Kirloskar. As a company, we have always been progressive as far as gender parity and women's participation has been concerned. My great-great-grandmother, Mrs. Yamutai Kirloskar, who is the wife of S.L. Kirloskar, used to run a company that made bimetal bearings for internal combustion engines in the 1950s. This company had a manufacturing unit that was run solely by destitute women. My grand-aunt, Mrs. Shashitai Kirloskar, also ran our hotel business. So we've had a history of women running businesses in our group. KBL has also regularly published 3 magazines called Stree, Manohar, and Kirloskar from 1916 to 1985, which focused on progressive topics covering women empowerment, like girl-child education and widow remarriage. These magazines were also run by Mrs. Shantatai Kirloskar, who is another family member. Coming back to more recent times, I would like to first say that we are in the heavy engineering space. So as a percentage, there are less women that apply to companies like ours compared to companies in other sectors, say like IT or retail. If there were more women that applied, we would have been very happy to take them. However, we still have far more women in our company compared to others in other sectors or in the same sector at every level in our organization. We have more women than is statutorily required at the board level. We have quite a few women at senior positions in our companies. At leadership levels, we have had women HR heads, CFOs, company secretaries, legal heads, plant heads, production planning heads. So in fact, there is no department in our company where we deny job opportunities to women. If there are no women in certain departments, it's because there are no women that applied for this position. An example of this would be why we don't have a woman foundry head to run our traditional metal casting foundries. However, in areas that women do not traditionally apply for jobs, we have homegrown talent. We have a precision casting facility that was inaugurated about 3 years ago that is headed by a woman who was groomed internally. This facility has a 70% woman workforce that specializes in the lost foam technique, which is similar to the lost wax foundry process, but it's lighter as it's foam. We have another example of homegrown talent. In 2011, we started an all-women operated and managed plant at a village called Kannur, which is located 30 kilometers outside Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. Kannur had a history of child marriage, especially for girls, as they were looked upon as a burden. We employ around 200 women between the ages of 19 and 35 years today. They were all 8th grade dropouts that were put through a rigorous 6-month on-the-job training program, which was immensely successful. I will go to the extent of saying that these women surpass the level of skill sets that an ITI graduate possesses. Today, it is one of our most productive plants, assembling one pump every 17 seconds with the lowest rejection rate. They've also made it to the Limca Book of Records, which is the Indian version of the Guinness Book of Records. These women have become financially independent. They bring in substantial income for their families, and their parents don't want to marry them off anymore. And what is really surprising is that everyone thought that this model was not sustainable. They thought we would be plagued by high absenteeism, that these women would eventually get married and leave the job. But to everyone's astonishment, after they got married, they have relocated their husbands to Kannur. In fact, there was a point when we were contemplating starting a third shift to meet higher demand. And at the time, women were not allowed to work the night shift. When we asked our workers what they thought about this idea, they were dead against it. They thought it was a terrible idea. And they came back saying that they would generate the output of 3 shifts in 2 shifts, and they did. This initiative has had immense social impact. These women are ambitious, they aspire to educate their children, and many want their children to be doctors, lawyers, or engineers. And this is really the true strength of manufacturing, the ability to uplift a blue-collar worker to a white-collar worker within a single generation. And through the manufacturing sector, we will be able to bring millions of people into the taxable income brackets in a 10-year time frame, which is really not that long in the larger scheme of things. If there is a much needed policy change, it should be on how to incentivize manufacturing. We've incentivized the IT sector in the past by giving them a decade-long tax break. However, the IT sector provides jobs for the educated class, who would have probably been able to get jobs elsewhere, if not at the IT companies. The unique characteristic about manufacturing is that it can skill the unskilled and make them part of the organized sector. This is really what India needs today, considering the number of people in blue-collar jobs. One of the reasons why we also have more women at every level compared to other companies in our sector is because we have a merit-based environment. Our past experiences taught us that for women to perform well in organizations, all they need is equal opportunity and a safe working environment. Of course, we give women benefits such as maternity leave and sabbaticals as and when required, but this is a given and I will not dwell too much upon it. In general, we have not used any sort of affirmative action to enhance the number of women in our organization, simply because we've not found the need to do so. And affirmative action has the downside of diluting merit and competency. We operate in critical sectors like oil and gas, nuclear, defense. We cannot afford to compromise on competency. And KBL is one of the few Indian companies that makes finished products, not a component, but an entire product that we supply to first world countries. We compete with American and European companies across geographies, and we need to ensure that our products are best in class. In fact, the way the world works is that if you're an Indian company, we actually need to be better than an American or European company to be seen at par with them. Now, that's a completely different conversation on inequality, which is a topic for another time. Essentially, the point I'm making is that we are ambassadors for brand India, and therefore we do not compromise on talent and capability for the sake of affirmative action. Until now, I have only spoken about what kind of impact corporations can have on enhancing women's participation at different levels in the workforce. But what about deep-rooted attitudes and social norms that are prevalent in our society today that prevent women from participating in the workforce? I'm not going to concentrate on women and girls at the bottom of the pyramid, because all of us are very aware of the issues they face concerning basic amenities and needs. But I would like to focus on the strata of society where women come from well-to-do families, they're well-educated, are given opportunities, but still face inequality at home because they're women. They're not given the same kind of grooming or opportunities that boys in their family are given. I come from a family business, and I notice there are not as many women my age who, despite being in family businesses, have gotten the same opportunities or even upbringing that I have received to be able to take on their family businesses. And I'm focusing on this group because it's a very high potential group. If empowered, groomed, and given executive roles in their family businesses, will impact women's participation in the workforce exponentially, simply because powerful women make room for more women, and they will make room for women right from the top of the pyramid to the bottom. I was asked a very interesting question the other day about why family businesses with only daughters tend to sell out. And I thought about this question, and I felt it has a lot to do with upbringing. After all, being able to cope with any situation is all about mental preparedness. It's about thinking of a particular situation enough times to not fear it anymore. It's really about how you groom your daughter to run a business. Most boys in family businesses are exposed to many aspects of the business right from childhood, and they're involved in conversations regarding business from a young age. So they very easily picture themselves being a part of the business. But I notice that this is not done as often with the girls. Girls in family businesses are generally left to their own devices. No one takes as much interest in grooming them because they think they will just get married and move on in life. This was not, however, the case in my family. As in our family, we do not make a distinction between boys and girls. So I was exposed to the business from a very young age, like my brother. And neither of us found the idea of running a business or company scary, nor was it an alien concept. But most girls do not get this kind of upbringing. And since they're not acclimatized to the idea of running a company, they tend to find the whole idea very alien. Therefore, in the long term, if their parents had a family business, they eventually take the decision to encash their business. So I think it's very important to groom daughters from a young age in a manner that would allow them to take over the business and be successful. So on that note, I shall end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rama. Lots to talk about. We'll get to that when we get into our dialogue. Sunil, can you walk us through how JCB is doing?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Thank you, first of all, James and Ananta Center to give us this opportunity to bring across the view of JCB towards the ungendered or gender neutral, as we call it. I am actually feeling that some of the points have been covered by Ms. Nui and some of the points have been covered by Ms. Rama Kirloskar already, but I'll still try to do justice in the next 5-7 minutes. I will actually start with an anecdote. 4 or 5 years ago, when I was heading the Pune plant, let me first start with JCB, what JCB does. So I think most of you know, JCB is into construction equipment. We have 5 plants across India. So we have 5 plants, 6 is under commissioning. The first plant in Vallabhbad started 43 years ago, so it has a legacy. So once when I was heading the Pune plant, I was asked to go to Jaipur plant for something. And Jaipur, we had a lot of ladies. I'll come to that later as to how did we achieve that. And I was tasked by my manager to have a lunch with a group of select ladies, just an informal chat to find out what's going on, are there any issues, and so on and so forth. So I did that. And I was actually surprised towards the end of the meeting when one lady asked me, why do you have lunch with us? When MD comes, he has lunch with us. When senior leadership, why are you making us feel special or privileged? Because if we keep on doing that, it will never be gender neutral. And that struck me, and I gave that feedback back into the organization. And I think that was the last lunch we had only with ladies group. So I think if we cannot go one way, we should not go the other way as well, is the message. Now, this also means, are we really aware of why do we need this gender neutrality, or what is the objective of what we are doing? Probably not. What do we do about it? I think it's a larger question. But coming to how do we address in this in our organization, and I think when I say JCB, all the manufacturing organizations have similar issues. Now, if you look at our organization, I can stratify in two different groups. One group is, let's say, senior leadership, middle management staff, and then you have shop supervision and shop associates, very similar to what Rama talked about. If you stratify it function-wise, you have people working in offices, HR, legal, purchasing, engineering, supply chain, so on and so forth, and people on the field. And field could mean sales field, service field, and the shop floor employees. So two different strata, two different approaches. So what do we do at senior versus junior? On the senior leadership thing, when we are doing lateral hiring, we have a mandate to appoint a lot of ladies, equal amongst others. So no preference. And we have been successful in the last 3, 4, 5 years. We have the legal head, EVP legal is a lady. And then we have, as Rama said, hordes of other ladies heading finance, heading plant HR, heading marketing, and so on and so forth. The other way to do is organically. Since you don't get in our sector, in manufacturing sector, it is very difficult and very similar to what Rama talked about. The induction at the entry level. Again, two different segments. On the shop floor, we take all the ITIs, and coming back to the Jaipur factory, we had an aspiration that we should have 30% ladies on the shop floor. And please remember, ours is a very heavy engineering kind of thing, where you do welding, painting, assembly of big excavators and all you are aware of. 30% we thought was an aspirational target. But 8 years down the line today, we have 34% girls working on the shop floor day in, day out, all the 3 shifts, not 2 shifts. And we believe that they are all working with full productivity. So I don't think going back 2 shifts that Rama talked about would be practical, because we have a lot of capital intensive equipment. And it is governed by the cycle time of equipment rather than people who run it. So that's one. Number 2, the GETs and the management trainees, again at entry level, for the last 3 years, we have mandated ourselves that we will take 50% each, and we have been successful. And we have also been successful in retaining that percentage. So lateral hiring mandate very clear, equal amongst others, and entry level where there is a special focus. You have to have special effort because it's not so easy. It is easier said than done. You have to go to various ITIs. Again, I'll again pinch it from Rama. We are setting a Vadodara factory, and this time we have taken a target for 50%, and we couldn't find ITI welders. There are no ITI welders in Gujarat. So what do? So you hire from other trades, and then in any case, in our education system, the people are not trained enough. You train them themselves. So they have basic fundamental knowledge of what ITI teaches, and then we train them on the core skills that we need. Now, why is it so difficult generally, and especially in manufacturing? I think first of all, again, I keep going back to the earlier talked about things. Probably there are not enough candidates. So if you talk about heading operations or heading service, you won't find any. Forget getting CV or not, but you won't find any. How do you hire any ladies there? Can we do something lateral transfer or not? Probably not. So the GETs, METs, MT scheme, which we have started 3-4 years ago on the 50-50, 50 ladies, 50 men, that will work, but it will take some time. It may take 10-15 years to reach a point where the leadership team is acquired by the ladies as well. The second big factor is willingness as well. And Miss Nui also touched upon it. She did not say willingness, but she comes some other way. But is every woman ready to take a wider or a bigger responsibility? My experience of 24 years says, I think the answer is no. I have tried on a number of occasions. And I failed. I can tell you all those cases, but I think we all understand the complexities of that. Number three, in manufacturing, there are some things I talked about segmentation. If we talk about the field service, where the service engineer has to go to attend a machine in the remotest part of India. It could be day, night, traveling through, not only by air, by bus, by bullock cart or anything, and then facing a customer who could be an irate customer. So that is one scenario. The other scenario is in manufacturing, where you have to lift loads, do welding 8 hours a day. So these are tough jobs. Can we attract enough women? There is a challenge. Are we doing something about it? Yes, we are doing something about it. So let us talk about manufacturing first. In manufacturing, if we go to our latest plants, Jaipur, and then I talked about Vadodara as well, everything is very modern, state of the art. You don't have to lift loads. The ergonomics are taken care of. The ecosystem has been built. I am sure you understand what ecosystem I'm talking about. Learnings of Jaipur. So what we did in Jaipur, probably we cannot do it in Ballabgarh and Pune because we are not hiring at the workman level. But in Jaipur and Vadodara, the learning has been my ecosystem has been created. When it goes to the higher roles, again, level playing field, treating them equal to everyone, giving them enough growth opportunities. Can we give flexible hours? Probably we can, but right now we have not gone into that path. We are still exploring whether we can do it or not, considering the nature of our business. So there are ways and means. But I think that if you look at the bigger picture, it is all about educating people. And when I say educating people, it does not necessarily mean sending the girls to school. It is educating the whole masses, the parents, the families. And I think in this educating people, the biggest person who has to be trained or educated is men. Because we are not used to work with ladies culturally in India, especially in manufacturing. I'll again go back to one story. Once in Pune, I used to go to the canteen and then have lunch. I used to see a girl sitting alone and having lunch, and she was the shop floor supervisor. After a few days, I called her and asked her, "Why do you do the lunch alone? Why do you not have colleagues or friends?" She said, "I have tried my best to go and then sit with my men colleague. They are very hesitant to have me as a colleague sitting." So it's not about the girls. I think it is about us men. How do we accept girls in our part of society? We are not used to it. We are used to it at home. Everyone has girls, women at home, but in offices we are not used to it properly, and then we have to educate ourselves. So if we summarize and 3-4 things, gender diversity in manufacturing is now, I think, essential. One, for the larger objective. Two, because why should we lose on that talent pool Mr. talked about? Compare it with the market share. We say we don't serve 40% market, so our market share will drop. Why do you not apply that to talent? You are losing on that 30-40% talent pool. So do something about it, and we are doing something about it. Number two, giving them a level playing field when they are on board, giving them enough opportunity, same salary, no issues. Third thing is making the ecosystem ready, including educating men, educating everyone, on the shop floor, providing the work ergonomics, which facilitates them to work more efficiently without any, let's say, challenges at all. So I think in the last 7-8 years, we have got assistance, and this journey has been very seamless, and this will continue. That's what I can say. That's a bit from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank you. I think we might have to extend this time because there's a lot to talk about as we get into the dialogue. Anuradha, you want to bring us up on HUL and then we'll dive into the conversation?
Thank you. Thanks, James, and thanks, Rama and Sunil, for a really good setup. I'll dwell very briefly on HUL and our journey towards becoming gender balanced, and then speak a bit more specifically on what we are doing to create an equal playing field for women in our manufacturing, in the manufacturing part of our business. So HUL is not a stranger to most of us. But with over 85 years of heritage in India, HUL is India's largest FMCG company. On any given day, 9 out of 10 Indians 9 out of 10 Indian households use our products. And this gives us a really unique opportunity to create a brighter future. At the heart of our business strategy is our purpose, which is about making sustainable living commonplace. And we are known for our great brands, which are household names, across 15 distinct categories like fabric solutions, laundry, home and hygiene, skin cleansing, skin care. And if I were to translate these into brands which are really friends of many of us and our households, it would be brands like Lifebuoy, Dove, Quality Balls, Rexona, Clinic Plus, Sunsilk, Pepsodent, Axe, Brook Bond, Horlicks, and many more. HUL carries really the legacy of this Unilever's larger purpose and vision. And in trying to build a sustainable and responsible organization, we have a very, very clear sort of a strategy, which we call our compass. And at the heart of our compass is building a inclusive and gender balanced organization. And to this effect, we kicked off on this journey about 10 years ago when we said that we would be gender balanced. And I think given the fact that most of the consumers of our brands are women, the business case for why a business with more women makes commercial sense is very clear, because having women, having diverse people in our business just brings us closer to understanding the different needs of our diverse consumer diaspora across the country. And therefore, it is absolutely critical that women are active decision makers at every step of our value chain. Like I said, we set off on this journey to be gender balanced in 2010. And I'll speak about the managerial workforce first, and then in more broad terms. We were at 18% of gender balance. We don't call it diversity because we believe that gender balance is important because both genders bring their unique strengths to the table. And we were at 18% then. Today, we are at 43%. And this is significantly ahead of the industry average, which is about 30%. A third of our board or management committee at HUL, including myself, gender balance. So we had 3 out of 9 women. And I think we made significant strides in becoming gender balanced in all functions of our business at the managerial level. The ones that are a little bit behind but have made significant strides are our supply chain or the manufacturing part of our business and customer development or sales. The approach that we have taken in the last 10 years has been a very holistic one. And it starts really with putting a stake in the ground and saying that we need to have a clear goal that we will be 50-50 and we will be gender balanced. And it needs strong leadership advocacy and support, because if the leaders don't walk the talk, there are many reasons why people down the organization will find very, very clever and plausible reasons for why it just doesn't make sense and why men could do better or the same job better, faster, or why women would struggle to be successful in an organization. But it starts with strong leadership role modeling. The second is making sure that we create headroom in the organization and that every time there is an opportunity, we make sure that there are balanced slates. And while we create this headroom, we have to make sure that there is supply. It's very easy to say that there are just not enough women in engineering colleges, or it's very easy to say that there are not enough women in technical or R&D or in frontline jobs. But we have had to find very proactive and creative solutions to make sure that we enhance the supply. And this has included bringing in women at lower levels in the organization and then accelerating their growth so that we can infuse a different stream of talent into our managerial pool. It has also meant making partnerships with educational institutes, giving scholarships, special opportunities. It has meant creating programs that allow bridges for women to come back after taking career breaks. So we were the first, along with the Tatas, in the last decade to launch a return to work program called Career by Choice. And Career by Choice was basically intended to help women who had taken a break from work, mostly for maternity, to come back into a corporate career and to do it at their pace. Today, Career by Choice has evolved, and we've realized that it's not just women, but also men who may want to avail of flexibility. And therefore, we have two different experiments, as we call them. One is called You Work, which allows our employees to work flexibly for any reason, whether it's sabbatical or a career break. And the other is Open to You, which allows us to engage with diverse employee groups in a short-term gig-like fashion. And these can ultimately be a great source of talent pool for us. You will find the evolution from Career by Choice, which was specifically for women, to now new employment models, which are equally open to men and women. Because in many ways, we've got to evolve our approach and strategy with the evolving nature of our country. And we see today that households are becoming a lot more balanced, where men are equally willing to take a backseat and allow their spouses to pursue careers. And therefore, I have had one of the very bright members of my team come and say that they want to take a year off because he's just become a father and he wants to take a year off to give time to his child because his wife, who works, wants to sort of get back to work immediately. So, creating policies that support demand, supply, creating the policies, and most importantly, creating a mindset, culture are some of the things that have stood us in good stead. And doing this in a consistent, repeatable model for the last 10 years has allowed us to make this progress. Specifically, coming to marketing and come to manufacturing, it hasn't been easy. We have over 30 manufacturing sites in some of the most remote or greenfield locations. And here, like I said, it has really meant finding very, very creative solutions, which include a very holistic 6-point action plan, which we have used to address the issues. How do we attract STEM talent, for example? And therefore, we've had to widen our net and bring in partnerships with the IITs, the NCTs, and other institutes to create training programs to accelerate women. And I spoke about this before. We have been obsessive about bringing in women in parts of the supply chain organization, which are less, which are in less hardship locations. For example, quality, safety, procurement, planning. And as we bring these women in and they start to feel secure and successful in the organization, we have them putting up their hands. And today we have 5 or 6 of our biggest plants being headed by women factory managers. The second thing is we've really put focus on tackling the issue, the reasons why women exit. And therefore, it's like, like Sunil and Rama spoke about very often, it's women who self-select themselves out. And therefore, making sure that we have the pulse of the women. Not all women exit because, they want to be with their family or because they have approached maternity. There could be very different reasons. Women leave equally because they don't feel they have career opportunities or they don't feel their needs have been addressed. But most of all, we've seen that it is because they don't feel that there are enough role models. And therefore, creating female role models in the manufacturing part of our organization has been critical. And I spoke about our lady factory managers who do this. Creating stories that matter, because ultimately it's stories that travel and create culture. For example, we have an all-women plant in Haridwar. They run our color cosmetics. So our Lakme nail polish is made there, and it's an all-women plant. Recently, worked with the governments in West Bengal, Punjab, to start night shifts. And we were one of the only companies where we have night shifts for women. And the government has sort of come ahead in partnering with us because they believe that we will create the infrastructure that's required to make women successful. Going down, as I said, moving away from the managerial cadre very quickly to the front line, we have said that in the next few years, we will hire 4,000 women in our shop floor. And I spoke about how we started with bringing in women across shifts. It means partnering with governments. It means creating the infrastructure. It means working with their communities and societies. And all of this. And I think we have enough learnings from our experience of the managerial cadre to now pursue this with passion and commitment. The last thing I'll talk about is really that beyond everything that we may do as an organization, the one thing that is sort of absolutely critical for us to pave the way to an equal world. And the theme of this conference is the leveling, but to really make sure that we can create a level playing field, what we need to create is equity advocates. Because I'll end with a story where a woman a few years ago, shared a very personal example of how she felt that, she had to leave a part of her identity at the door when she stepped into our offices, because it was such a male bastion, such an alpha male culture, and seeing her discomfort triggered and got me to reflect about what it means to create a really inclusive environment, and therefore we need to create advocates of equity. And we can talk a bit more about that in the rest of the conversation, but that's where I'll leave it for now.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Anuradha. Before we jump into our dialogue, there's a couple of comments that came up, and I want to recognize something that each of you said, and Sadhna mentions this. She says the biggest battle is the culture and the family situations, and we need to have a dialogue where women are not put into boxes, but are treated equally. What was fascinating, and I got the sense that each of you takes this as obvious, but before we take it as obvious, I want all of us to just note it that, you have plants where there are women working on the shop floor, running plants. That seems obvious to you. I have a feeling it's not so obvious to a lot of the rest of society, or many of us, seeing this, which is to Sadhna's comment, we box people in, right? The fact that you have an all-women plant, there are women on the floor running factories, what we think are heavy, dirty equipment jobs that are supposed to be men's jobs, right? So that box is shattered, right? It was so obvious the way the three of you talked about it. I just wanted to make sure we locate it. Each of you also talked about the idea of equal opportunity, but it had a ring of difference to it. And I want to hear from each of you what that meant to actually action equal opportunity. And I'll just highlight 2 or 3 things I heard, and I'd like each of you to talk about. Rama, you talked about the fact that you can't just say, please apply, and then you will get a large set of applications. There's actually a more thoughtful process to create that opportunity, right? So you talked a lot about the need for training to actually, that you can't just rely on, homegrown is pretty important. Anuradha, you mentioned this at the end, that it's not just about level playing field, it's about equity. It's about the way, to get, and equity is very different than equality, right? So we're not talking about treating people equally, but we're giving, so can each of you talk about the essence of this? Like, what does it mean to step beyond just, throwing the doors open and actually being active in trying to get to this equal opportunity or equity that we're trying to get to? Rama, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think, James, as a company, we do everything to ensure that we give women opportunities in practically every department. And let me give you an example of something we had done earlier, right? Now, for one of our oil and gas companies, which is a very critical application, we decided that we wanted to allow women on the shop floor, and it was very, very large pumps and turbines that we wanted them to build. And most of our factories are automated. So it's not a big deal whether you have a man or a woman there, right? Because at the end of the day, the job is being done by a crane. So what we noticed is that we allowed a lot of women in on these shop floor hands-on activities, right? And we had a great experience with them. They were performing really well. They were picking up jobs really well. And then maybe 8 months down the line or 12 months down the line, you realize that, hey, they are quitting and they're going to get married. And that really makes you wonder whether, it's not purely the opportunities. It's not that they're not getting those opportunities. It's also their upbringing at home. And I think there's a lot of societal pressure for a 20-something-year-old to get married and start a family. And I think also the other aspect is that I think as far as women are concerned, everybody stresses on the biological clock. But the fact is, you also have a career clock. You can't get into your career at 38 and 40, right? You have to be there when you are 20-something-year-old, because the learning, the kind of stress you can take, the kind of openness you can have with your colleagues and your seniors is very different. You can get away with asking inane questions when you're 20. You can't get away with asking inane questions when you're 40. At 40, someone's going to call you incompetent, right? So I think they need to understand that, and it's not bad either way. I think women really need to understand whether they want to be married and live a married life and have kids, or do they like that career path? Because frankly, it is what's going to make that individual happy, right? And it's not that one path is better than the other. Ultimately, it is, do you know what that path entails? Because I'll be very honest, either path is a compromise. The real question is, which compromise are you more willing to make? And what I feel many times is that girls in their 20s don't really understand what that marriage path entails. It all seems like a very rosy fairy tale, but in reality, it's a pretty tough path. I mean, parenting is a pretty tough path, and it's not a job that you can retire from. It's a lifelong job. I'm in my 30s and I still need guidance from my parents. So as long as they're aware of what they're getting into, and as long as they know that, yes, when they get married, possibly most of them quit their careers because marriage, well, then they're obligated to have children. And once you have children, then, I feel many of them feel stuck in a role which they thought they could get out of, or they could have best of both worlds. But in reality, I think parenting also is a full-time job, and it's a very, very hard job. So I think a lot of it boils down to societal pressures and upbringing, and not just the opportunities that are available to them in the market. Today, I feel with companies like us, companies like JCB and HUL, there are a lot of opportunities there. But I think not many women are able to make the most of those opportunities because of their upbringing.
Just before we jump off, so I'm going to bring you in, but Rama, it feels like there's almost three categories. There are a set of people who step out because of their choice. Like you said, both are very difficult trade-offs. You pick one, right? So some will do it by choice, either to quit and go home and stay with the family, or to say, no, I'm going to focus on career. And there are some who do it, it's not their choice. It's actually societal pressure. Is there something as a leader that you think, because that's the one where leadership can actually play a role in helping to swing, is there something that can be done with that? With that group?
I think, James, society needs to be made more aware. And I think girls need to be educated more about this when they're young. Because I think upbringing is everything in a woman's life to make sure that she is a strong, capable leader. In many cases, women from when they were children are told you're going to get married and have kids. So all the decisions they take in their life from when they are young showcase that they're not building talent. They are not taking a hardworking route throughout college, because they understand that ultimately that is their fate. But if you tell women that, hey, we have a family business, you have an opportunity in this business, you need to have the skill sets, then automatically those girls, when they're in school, they take those STEM classes, they say, no, I want to do science, I don't want to do arts, or commerce. You can make a career out of art. I'm not saying you can't. But at the end of the day, if you want to run a corporation, you need to have a skill set that's going to count. And those women then, once they know those opportunities are open for them when they are older, they make sure they have that talent and they develop that talent and skill sets. You choose the right courses in college, you choose the right mentors in college, you take the right internships, right, to groom yourself. And if all that decision making happens when you're young, if your parents say that that option, that avenue is open for you.
It reminds me of what Indra Nui said about how she was brought up and the freedoms, quite different than people of her generation at the time. The way her self-perception was built by her parents. Thank you. Sunil, do you want to talk about how you think about the active nature that JCB has to take to create this level playing field?
So, James, I will touch on the manufacturing aspect, or let's say the manufacturing associates aspect of it. Now, when we embarked on this journey 8 years ago, though we kept an aspiration target of 30%, but we did not, heart of hearts, we did not believe that it will happen. We thought it's a more aspirational thing, and then let us give it a try. And then we started, and the more we got into it, the more we got confident that yes, it is possible. See, there are two sides to it. One is whether people are willing, whether the society will allow, whether the family will allow to start long term. The other thing is the need. Probably we are missing that bit. There are enough people who need a job, whether it's a boy or a girl. And if you look at the geographical status or the status of ladies in India, Rajasthan is kind of most backward area. It's not like Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu where ladies have been working for a number of years in industries. Rajasthan, there is no industry. Forget ladies. There are no men working in the industries in Rajasthan. So you go to the parts of Rajasthan where people are needy. It is very difficult. So it is not about selecting a women and giving her a job. It is about having a bonding with the family. How you bond with the family and then make sure that the family allows their girl child to come to the factory in an unknown world where they have not worked in that environment, forget allowing their kid to work there. Once you do that, then it's all about how do you protect them, how do you make sure that they are safe, secure, they have a sense of pride. And please realize that one is need. The other thing is JCB is a product which runs in a lot of rural areas. And whenever these girls go back to their village and then say, I am wearing a JCB shirt, that gives them a sense of pride. And the sarpanch will ask her, what do you do? And I drive a machine, I do this, I do weld. So I think it is creating a sense of pride as well. So one is need, one is managing the families in a positive way, creating a sense of pride. Now, if you see after 8 years, there are girls who joined as welders and they have moved up to the ladder. They are working in 3 shifts. The first shift starts at 6 o'clock, which means that they have to start from home at 5 o'clock, start duty at 6, go back, do family chores. The other bit is getting married and moving out. Again, there are two factors. One is society pressure. The other things, sometimes the other aspect sometimes is the geographical necessity to move out. So I know at least of 7-8 cases, maybe more. I personally know 7-8 cases where we have accommodated such kind of requests that if someone wants to move from Jaipur to Pune or Jaipur to Ballabgarh or Pune to Ballabgarh, so that we facilitate. I will not say that we will compromise, but we find out a way to accommodate these kind of requests. So as I said, we have been very successful from 30% aspiration to currently we are at 34, and going into Vadodara, we are aspiring to 50. Whether we reach 50 or not, the time will tell, but I'm sure we will be very close to 50.
You mentioned this idea of bonding with the family, and Rama also talked about that there's such great societal pressure. So when you talk about bonding with the family, this goes beyond just your employee. You're talking about reaching beyond that to their. What is it that you do? How do you do that? I mean, there's lots of privacy questions.
Once you make people join, on the joining day, you invite their families. You showcase your factory, what's going to happen. What are the fears? Will it be safe? Will it be secure? Will the girl be taken care of? How's the food? What special needs are you creating? What ecosystem are you creating? Is the job too difficult? So you make sure that they are taken care of. Number two, you create events half yearly, annually, that you invite the families. We used to have a family day. Unfortunately, we could not do that in 1 or 2 years because of all these things. But very consistently, and that's all across sites. Bring the families in and then say, again, it's from the employee pride to the family pride. Once you do that, once you're able to do that successfully, I think you are successful.
And do you think that's helped break some of the mindsets, some of the mindsets of families?
Yeah. Because then from 1 girl to 5 girls from a village, it has happened.
Wow, that's fantastic. Kavita had asked this question about these intergenerational biases and how do you get to them? And you're talking about an actual practical thing that just by practice, you can actually try to address that. Thank you. Anuradha, can you talk to us a little bit about this idea of equity versus equality, levelness? Yeah.
So I think, James, we've all heard the line that says diversity is being invited to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. So I think equity is really the next stage of that, which is, it's beyond giving equal opportunities to giving differentiated opportunities that really understand the different realities that diverse employee groups come from and face, and creating that level playing field by giving them the opportunities, the support that they need to be equally successful. And I think that is what really comes from a culture of being equity advocates, which has to start with very, very strong leadership role modeling. And let me talk to you about 2 or 3 aspects of this that we have, experimented with, and we're very much on this journey. But the first thing is really, as leaders, to listen and learn. The first thing we learn as a business of consumers and brands is that you listen to consumers. We spend a lot of time engaging with our consumers and customers to understand deep insight. And the same discipline we have to follow for our employees or the diverse talent groups that we want to bring into our business. Because like I said, if we want them all to be equally successful, then I think creating the organization has to ensure that we are able to do more than just giving them a seat at the table. And this means creating a culture of what I call deliberate inclusion. We have to understand individual realities, what it takes for them to be successful. For example, if there is a woman who she wants to be she's appointed to the top table, but if she has to be able to manage life across 2 cities, then we can't have the same template for her as we would for another member of the board another member of the board. We have to be able to make sure that we give her the flexibility that allows her to be successful. The second thing is about really, the infrastructure. And creating an infrastructure, meaning when you have at the office, I think in an office environment, it's more obvious, and it's things like policies and daycare, etc. But when you start getting into manufacturing, when you start getting into frontline sales, I think that infrastructure takes on a completely different meaning, with security becoming so important. So making sure that they have transport, making sure that they have basic amenities like toilets and loos. I mean, we have women who are in frontline sales. And the other day I was working the market and I was talking to one of our frontline women who said that, she struggles to find a bathroom at the stockist point where she works. So I think addressing these very, very basic infrastructure needs is really another very obvious part of becoming equity advocates. The third is, like I said, systemic biases. Our policies are, designed to have a certain amount of bias, but making sure that we are very mindful to make sure that, say, if you're creating a career break policy, or if you're creating a new employment model, like I spoke about open to you or you work, you can't assume that or you can't stereotype that this will only work for one group of employees. They may work for men, they may work for women. So, for example, we were the first company last year in the country to announce a gender neutral policy for survivors of domestic abuse. Now, the larger understanding might be that only women suffer from gender or domestic violence. And that is true for most part. But while framing a policy, it has to be gender neutral. The last part about being an equity advocate, I think, is really going beyond the workplace and being a voice of allyship. And I will talk about our efforts in becoming advocates and as a voice of allyship around the theme of gender-based violence, which I touched upon. Because we know that if we are to really give women an equal playing field in frontline jobs, we have to work with their communities. We have to meet them where their needs are. And one of the issues that came to light in the pandemic more than ever before was how there was the increase in cases on domestic violence. We know that in our country, most women at some point have suffered some kind of gender-based discrimination or violence. And therefore, we partnered with one of our brands, Clinic Plus, and created a Meri Beti Strong advertisement campaign, and really said that we will go beyond creating the policy internally. We put it out there for other organizations, and about 14 other companies came and we shared our policy with them. We also made a commitment saying that we will launch a campaign called #Unmute. And through last year, we have worked on this to really end the stigma and silence around domestic violence. And we have educated 100,000 women in our ecosystem about women's safety at the workplace, women's safety at home, and women's safety in public places. And this is important because it's an absolutely critical issue for us to address. And it's going beyond the obvious of what a woman might experience in our work environment. But the fact is that they go back and face the reality, which in the end has an impact on them coming into work the next day and being successful. So I think really, if I were to sum it up, I said, as a being a leader, being an equity advocate means that we have to question our own assumptions about work, be willing to experiment, and really reach out to those who are diverse in our teams and make sure that we're doing what it takes for them to be successful.
Wonderful, thank you. Last question to all of you, and I want to pick up on something, Anuradha, one of the points you mentioned about the fact that many of these systems that you put in place were actually, you may have designed it thinking about women in mind, but frankly, it's a gender neutral policy system. Like you talked about careers by choice, you talked about the domestic abuse. The fact is that what we may have thought was originally designed for women is as applicable for men to select into for some of these policies as well. So the question to you, as you think about, it's actually dramatically changing the nature of what the workplace looked like, even from just 20 years ago. So in this time period, the question is it worth it? And not from the sense of, yes, it's a better equitable world and therefore it's a nice and good thing to do. Yes, I get it. But from a purely bottom line productive basis, do you feel it's worth it from a financial perspective for a company to do this versus having a single gendered or alpha male now? And can you palpably say, yes, it's worth it? Anuradha, you're off mute, so you get to go first.
Look, I think I would put it the other way and say that we wouldn't have liked to find out what it would have been if we hadn't been on this journey. It is hard to put a percentage of growth contribution that comes from having women, but definitely there are things that intuitively make more sense. And there are certain businesses that having that woman's perspective means that the innovation cycle goes faster. And I think these are some of the examples. But for most part, I think really is the higher levels of engagement, creativity, which are so core to our culture. And I think that positive culture is in large part a leading indicator of business growth. And that's why I think it's absolutely perfect.
Thank you. Sunil?
I think all those that Anuradha said, plus I would say that the ladies have, in our case, as I understand, more dedicated. So if you tell them once, the job is done, compared to what their male colleagues do. If you are looking at a real positive thing, is it contributing to P&L? Maybe not. But I think it creates a balance in the office, in the shop floor. The atmosphere is not violent if it is all men, I would say. So I think there are subtle advantages, but does it add? Is it a big business sense from a talent point of view, from a talent pool acquiring point of view? Rest. Otherwise, I don't think it adds to the bottom line of the business.
Thank you. Rama?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I would say that from a bottom line perspective, having women in an organization has absolutely made a difference. We have different kinds of businesses. And I would say for our mass production business, which is where we have an entirely, women operated and managed plant, they are 50 to 60% more productive than the men. So we are actually thinking of converting all our mass production plants to all women operated and managed over a period of time. But that being said, I think different people are good in different roles. And as far as repetitive light work is concerned, women are very good. They outperform the men, hands down. But as far as our foundry business is concerned, which is our traditional casting business, or our large pump division, where our pumps can go up to 40, 50 tons, I would still prefer men in those areas because number one, it's difficult to find women. Number two, I think until the upbringing changes and society is more accepting and they groom their daughters to want to go into these type of roles, we're just going to get less and less applicants. And even if we groom them internally, we've not had much success in retaining women in those types of positions where you have traditional heavy engineering. But as far as mass production business is concerned, absolutely made a difference to bottom line.
Wonderful. I want to thank you all very much. It's been really enlightening and actually just inspiring listening to the kind of things you're doing. And I think somewhat obviously for you, but for some of us who are also in this sector, I was taking a lot of notes for things I'm going to do differently in the next year or so. So thank you all very much, Rama, Sunil, Anuradha, for just breaking some of our notions and showing us what we can get done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.